everyone, and welcome to episode 258 of the Medieval Podcast. I'm Danièle Cebulski, also known as the 5-Minute Medievalist. September, am I right? I feel like this is such a busy time, and I feel like every year I end up doing a solo episode in September because I haven't got everything together, or there are so many people that I'm planning to talk to and we just haven't coordinated yet. And here we are in September again. So I think that this is just such a busy time. And I hope that if you are feeling that pressure, that you're giving yourself grace. And I hope that you are giving your favorite podcasters grace as well, because it is a time. It's definitely a time. So for today, it's probably going to be a shorter episode. I wanted to bring together some of the books that have come across my desk that I wanted to share with you that are not their own episodes by themselves. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. We're going to talk through my process, how I pick things, why I pick certain books for the podcast. But today's episode is going to be 6 books that have come across my desk that I wanted to share with you that otherwise will not be their own episode for reasons that I will be explaining in a few minutes. So right after this, we're going to be talking about 6 new medieval books that I want you to know about. Okay, so when it comes to picking books that are going to be featured on the podcast as their own episodes, there are a few guidelines that I tend to follow as much as possible. And this is based a lot on instinct, based a lot on what I think is going to end up being a good episode. So, if it's an episode that you don't like or it doesn't work, we can blame me solely. This is my decision and no one else's. So what do I go with when I'm trying to come up with a podcast episode? Well, a lot of books will come across my desk from publishers. I will either look at the publisher's catalog and see what's coming up that's medieval, or publishers' reps at this point in my career know me and they might send me suggestions. And the books that I have on the podcast, you'll notice, tend to be one author, one subject, and a subject that I think we can bring to a very broad public in about 45 minutes without losing anyone in the weeds of academia. So there are so many other books that I read and think are good. They might be essay collections. They might be really academic books. And so I don't put them on the podcast because I feel like it's going to be a better experience for people to come across them as books, instead of trying to say, well, I wish you could see this art right now. If you could see this page, it would show you this. So I'm choosing books based on what I think is going to really fit this audio medium. That said, there are so many other books that are great. And this seemed like a good opportunity to sort of get them from my desk into your ears so that you have some suggestions for books that might be in your realm of interest, but might not otherwise have made a podcast episode for the reasons that I've suggested. So let's get started. The first book I want to tell you about is called Drugs in the Medieval Mediterranean, Transmission and Circulation of Pharmacological Knowledge, and it's edited by Petros, Bouras-Vallianatos and Dionysios Stathakopoulos. I hope that I pronounced those names correctly. I love books about medicine, as you know. I think books about pharmacology are especially interesting because it's fascinating to me how people interact with the natural world, how they figured out what works and what doesn't, because I know that process of trial and error must have been, well, stressful to say the least. So this idea of collecting pharmacological knowledge from the natural world and sharing it is always very interesting to me. So this is a collection of essays, which means there are a whole bunch of discrete topics by individual authors or several authors. Here are some of the things in the table of contents. We have drugs, provenance, and efficacy in early medieval Latin medical recipes. We have Arabic texts on pharmaceutical properties of animals. We have a Hebrew herbal between text and illustration. We have magic, drugs as therapeutic substances in later Byzantine sorcery and beyond. We have remedies or superstitions. Which one is it? So we have stuff that is from the Arabic world, from the Latinate West, from the Jewish world. And all of these essays are talking about ways in which you can use plants and animals as well to help heal yourself or to prevent bad things from happening to you in terms of health. I think this is an absolutely fascinating book. It's got all of these amazing essays in it, which are individually great on their own and collected together under the whole topic of drugs in the medieval Mediterranean. So I wanted to bring that one to your attention. Again, it's got so many authors, I couldn't possibly talk to everyone, but it's really a worthwhile book. It is from Cambridge University Press. So the next book I want to tell you about is called Fixers: Agency, Translation, and the Early Global History of Literature. And it's by Zrinka Stahuljak. And I hope I've said her name correctly. So this is a book that is for the people who are really interested in translation, in literature, in genre, in post-colonialism, people who are interested in getting back to source, in walking through the ways that books are transmitted and translated. And the reason I'm telling you about this book in this context as part of the roundup of books that I'm telling you about is that this one really is thickly into the weeds of things like post-colonialism, like genre, like translation, transmission. And so this is the type of thing that might speak to people who are more specialists in that area. If you're not a specialist and you want to read it, I mean, go for it. It's extremely intelligent, careful, thoughtful work for people who are interested in literature and really, really digging into what these words mean sort of in a cultural context. I feel like I'm doing a lot of apologizing while telling you these books are great. It's probably the Canadian in me who wants to have everyone on the podcast all the time, 24/7, just streaming all the time. But I think I've got it across at this point. You understand. You understand. I don't need to apologize anymore, right? Okay. So the next book that I have for you is called Gunpowder Technology in the 15th Century, a study, edition, and translation of the Firework book. And this is by Axel Müller, who is just an incredible scholar when it comes to gunpowder, especially. He's also so important when it comes to putting on the big conference at Leeds, the International Medieval Congress at Leeds. So Axel's work is amazing, and this is a really great primary source. So cool and interesting, talking about how to make fire arrows, for example. The reason that I'm not having an episode on this book is that I just had one on gunpowder with Cliff Rogers. So I don't have two on gunpowder specifically. Instead, I'm just telling everyone to go and read Axel's book. I mean, fire arrows. It's so cool. So if you're interested in primary sources, that is a book straight from the Middle Ages that Axel has translated for you, as well as given you information about. This one is so good. Gunpowder Technology in the 15th Century. And this one is from Boydell Press, and it features a manuscript from the Royal Armouries. So kind of in partnership with Royal Armouries. All right, so those are all the really heavily text-based, not image-based books that I wanted to tell you about today. Now we're getting into some really great art books that I think you need to see for yourselves. The first one is called the Kennicott Bible, a masterpiece of Jewish book art. And when they say a masterpiece, it is truly a masterpiece. Like, you should see the illustrations in here. And of course, it's accompanied by really great essays by people who are experts in the topic. So this one, let me find the title page here. You can probably hear me flipping pages. This one is edited by Katrin Kogman-Appel with Javier del Barco and Maria Teresa Ortega Monasterio. And again, apologies if I have mangled anyone's names. When it comes to medieval manuscripts, I think people are always amazed by not just how bright the colors are, or interesting the little miniatures are, the little grotesques and figures like that, but also how perfectly symmetrical, geometrical these books are, these manuscripts are. And I think sometimes the most beautiful of these, and it makes a lot of sense, are religious books. So Bibles, Qurans, or Torahs. They are some of the most beautiful books that you can find from the Middle Ages. The Kennicott Bible is from the late Middle Ages, and according to this book, it originates in northern Spain. It's got everything you could ever want in a manuscript. It's got gold leaf. It's got unbelievably beautiful printing. It's got all of those geometric shapes. It's got figures, fantastic beasts. It's an absolutely gorgeous manuscript, and it's an absolutely gorgeous book. So if you're into medieval art, if you're into medieval religion, religious practice, or textual practice, this book is called the Kennicott Bible, a masterpiece of Jewish book art. Next up, we have another beautiful book from the Getty called The Book of Marvels, A Medieval Guide to the Globe. And maybe I need to apologize one more time. Apologies to the Getty Museum, because when this book came across my desk, I had it in my head that the exhibition was going to be in the fall. So I thought I was right on time to get people to go to the exhibition. It turns out that I've missed it. It was in the summer. Well, we all make mistakes. Apologies to the Getty. But the book is still out. The book is still available. So this is the Book of Marvels. It is edited by Larisa Grollemond, Kelin Michael, Elizabeth Morrison, and Joshua O'Driscoll. And it was based on an exhibit. So that's two manuscripts that work together in this exhibit and work together in this book. So I will read the note to the reader to give you a sense of what we have in this book. This book accompanies complimentary exhibitions at the J. Paul Getty Museum and the Morgan Library. The exhibitions present two illuminated French manuscripts of the Book of the Marvels of the World, one in the Getty's collection, the other in the Morgan's. Both manuscripts were probably created in Angers in northwest France around 1460 to 65. Pairing vivid descriptions with lively illuminations, the manuscripts explore dozens of locations around the globe, providing unique insight into how an elite French Christian audience imagined the world in the 15th century. So, as we've talked about on other podcasts, this is dealing with travel. It's dealing with the type of marvels that you find all over the world. So all of those things that are both amazing and troubling, you will find in this book, along with really great scholarship about why this is important, what it's telling us, and how it affects our culture today. So another beautiful book by the Getty. Apologies for people who were in LA or New York and wanted to visit these exhibitions. I'm sorry about that. I would suggest that because the Getty and the Morgan have so many amazing medieval manuscripts, that maybe we should all just get on their email list so that we don't miss stuff. Especially me, perhaps, but all of us who are interested in medieval manuscripts. So while the exhibition has closed, the Book of Marvels, A Medieval Guide to the Globe, is still available for people who are interested in travel and all of the amazing stuff that you find on the edges of the world in the medieval imagination. And last, but certainly not least, is The Wars of the Roses, The Medieval Art of Graham Turner. And this book is so beautiful. Graham Turner does a lot of the illustrations that have accompanied Christopher Gravitt's work. And Chris, if you're listening, I didn't get back to your email, but I did receive it. I will get back to you, I promise. Yes, everyone, you're seeing behind the curtain today for sure. So Chris Gravitt's books on knights are often accompanied by illustrations by Graham Turner. So all of those beautiful pictures of what a knight is wearing at certain times, all of these action images of what's happening in the Wars of the Roses, especially that's the context of this book. All of these imagined views into what it would have looked like in the Middle Ages, done by Graham Turner. And it's absolutely gorgeous. This book is one artist's reimagining of what things would have looked like back in the day based on a huge amount of research. It's the type of thing where if you're a scholar, you can still appreciate these images of people doing chivalric deeds, right? Riding around on horses with banners and pennants, and know that a huge amount of research has gone into it. So you can enjoy it both as a visual image and as a scholar. You can feel good about enjoying these images. They're absolutely beautiful. This book actually came to Peter at Medievalist Donnet. So in case you don't already know this, Peter is my neighbor and he brings me books from time to time. And he brought me this one to see and he might never get it back. It's absolutely beautiful. It's the type of book where you're like, should I get a second copy so I could take the images out and frame them? It's that gorgeous. Along with the other super gorgeous books that I've talked about today. The Wars of the Roses, The Medieval Art of Graham Turner is absolutely gorgeous. And for all of those people who love images of knights and kings and battles, especially ones that are super well researched. So that is the final art book I wanted to tell you about today. When this goes up and it's posted on medievalist.net, Peter's going to have links to all of these books so you can check them out yourself. I hope that you will, because they are all really, really fantastic in their own right. So the last thing I wanted to tell you about was I got an email from Ark Humanities Press, and I used to work for Ark, so hello to everyone that I used to work with at Ark. I hope you are all doing well. The email said that they're now offering a subscription service so that people can access digital copies of the Past Imperfect series. And this series is so good. It is written by people who are world experts in their subject. And the series covers, well, just about everything that you could be interested in. Battles, Byzantium, demons, well, everything. And the series is gained to introducing people to these topics in a very readable way so that you don't need to feel intimidated if you've never come across this before. These are meant to be a place to start your journey into these topics. I thought I would bring their new service to your attention in case it ends up being something that is worthwhile for you. So if you're interested in that, check out arkhumanities.org and check out the Past Imperfect series. So that is all the book information I wanted to give you today. Hopefully there are a few books that you heard about that you might be interested in. All of them are worth checking out. So this is my opportunity, of course, to thank you, as always, for supporting this podcast. And I really appreciate the people who are kicking in even the smallest amount on Patreon. Really appreciate it because it is donations that allow this podcast to keep going. If you're contributing on Patreon and you're like, it's just a little bit, I promise you, it's very significant to me. It is what allows me to do this work, and I really appreciate that. For all of the people who are feeling the financial squeeze, I totally hear you. It is not easy out there, is it? I did a podcast episode a couple of summers ago on free ways that you can support people who are doing podcasts. So if you're new to my podcast and you're like, how do I support my favorite podcasters? I did an episode on free ways to do it. The easiest way to do it is just allow the ads to play through. So again, if you're new to the podcast, you might not know this, but we get paid as podcasters from ad revenue only when people play the ads through. So it doesn't matter that the ads exist unless those ads actually play through. We don't get paid for that. So if you are somebody who's interested in supporting a podcast, mine or other people's, and you're like, how do I best do that? Letting the ads play through is super duper important. And if you have a couple of extra dollars to just kick into Patreon, I really, really appreciate that. Again, all of the contributions that you're making, all of the ways that you're helping out by sharing the podcast, by sharing my books, by letting the ads play through, by joining Patreon. So I just wanted to, while I'm sort of doing stuff off the cuff today, just wanted to really reiterate, as I do every week, and I sincerely mean it. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this work. I really, really appreciate your being here. Before we go, here's Peter from Medievalist Donnet to tell us what's on the website. What's going on, Peter?
Hey. Well, we have a fun little piece about how medieval governments work.
Really?
And they were working for you, no doubt.
Yes, of course, right? That's what all governments do. They work for you.
That's right. Especially King John of England.
Especially him.
And he's around this time when English records, administrative records, are starting to get kept. So there's something called the close rolls. Mm-hmm. These were the records where King John would send it under seal to somebody. Like, here's your order. It's under the royal seal. And of course, they kept a little counting of that. And it's really fun because it has all the little details, like every place he stops off at, which is like almost every day is a new place. He's sending out orders, and they could be like, hey, we need this sent to us, or have this prisoner put in irons, or hey, send a letter to King of Scotland thanking him for his treaty.
Yeah.
And lots of stuff about wine.
Well, yeah.
Like, hey, bring wine here, sell wine here, wine, more wine.
That is what it means to be a medieval king.
But it's a fascinating little bit. So we have all these translated examples, probably like 100 of these examples. A fun read. So if you want to see what life was like in the royal court of King John,
nice.
It's a pretty good source.
Awesome.
So we got that. Plus, we have a wonderful piece from Nicholas Morton about the Templars and were they too reckless in battle?
I think I know the answer to that, but everyone should read it. Everyone should read it.
And George Theotokos is returning after a while, being busy writing books and stuff. He's talking about a little-known Byzantine battle in the 10th century.
I mean, this is his wheelhouse for sure.
Indeed, it's probably little known because it's one the Byzantines lose. But George wants to talk about it, so we are the forum for that.
Yes, George wants to talk about it, even if the Byzantines don't.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Peter, for coming by and telling us what's on the website.
Thanks.
For everything from books to crooks, follow Medievalist Donnet on Facebook or X at Medievalists. You can find me, Danièle Cebulski, across social media at 5MIN Medievalist or 5 Minute Medievalist. And you can find my books at all your favorite bookstores, where you can get hold of Chivalry and Courtesy, Medieval Manners for a Modern World, now out in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. Our music is Beyond the Warriors by Guy Frog. Thanks for listening, and have yourself an awesome day.